Hey guys, welcome back to Car Culture TV, or as we like to call it, CCTV. I'm Aryan,
And I'm on it.
and in this week's episode, we're going to be looking at the latest news in the car world in Speed Trap, and then we're going to be looking at the new paradigms in racing in Cutting the Apex. Now let's get into Speed Trap. So, our first bit of news here, the Hyundai Venue. So, this is like a car they released kind of recently. It's really small as a crossover. Well, Hyundai India actually announced they're going to be releasing this car with a what they like to call an IMT, or Intelligent Manual Transmission. And the name is really similar to Toyota's IMT, or Intelligent Manual Transmission. Has the exact same name, really weird, and the same spelling too, lowercase I, capital M, capital T. I don't know how that works, but the way Toyota's works, at least, is that it does rev matching automatically for you. So would you like to explain what like rev matching is when considering a manual car?
Right, so basically in a manual car, the biggest thing that you're trying to achieve when switching from one gear to the next gear is making sure that the gear that you're going into, or the one that's not currently rotating, has to be the same speed as the gear that you're currently on. So what you do is you press the clutch, which disengages all the gears, and then you hit the accelerator to get the gear that you want to go into spinning at about the same speed as the gear what that was currently engaged was spinning. And then you slowly release the clutch till that gear, which is now already spinning at the speed that you've predefined with the accelerator, comes in. If you don't rev match, or if you don't get that gear spinning and then you try to insert it into place, it's going to grind and you're typically going to stall out the car, meaning you're going to get completely stuck and make an embarrassment of yourself on the middle of the road.
Yep.
And so rev matching is basically the concept of making sure that the gear that you're switching next to, whether you're going up or down, is the same speed as the gear that you are currently using in terms of rotations of the gear.
So yeah, it's obviously it helps out drivers a lot, and people have kind of liked Toyota's intelligent manual transmission because rev matching is something that early manual drivers struggle with, and it has the option of turning it off, so you can eventually get into that true manual feeling. But nonetheless, it has a clutch, has a shifter, very traditional manual more or less. Well, Hyundai's intelligent manual transmission is not traditional at all. It doesn't have a clutch. And, well, that's really interesting because a clutch is one of the most fundamental principles of a manual. I mean, we have cars where you can select the gear yourself with no clutch, and it's dual clutches, some automatic transmissions allow that, but they say that this manual transmission still works just like any other manual transmission, but there's no clutch.
See, that's the part that I don't get. How can you say the car works like any other manual transmission when it's missing like a core component? It's like saying like this car still works like a car, but it's missing the steering wheel. It's like, how do you you can't drive it then.
It's really strange, and honestly, like if you want to say it works like a traditional manual, it's hard to say that if you don't have that third clutch pedal. Well, what they say is that they have this thing called a let's see here, an intention sensor. Which is a really stupid name, but anyways, they call it the intention sensor. The intention sensor signals the transmission control unit to adjust the clutch so that you can shift the gear optimally. But essentially, it's really just like it does the clutch work for you, and you just put the gear in another, like you just select what gear you should be in, which is weird because, well, there's automatic cars where the gear select is, where a gear shifter is traditionally. So it doesn't make sense why this is a feature they're trying to sell.
Yeah, I totally get it. Like, it doesn't make sense that they would make a manual, take away the clutch, which is genuinely, like, having driven a manual recently, it is definitely the hardest point. It's not actually rowing the gears from, 1 to 2 to 3. You don't typically miss those marks. You don't accidentally go from 1 to 5 very often. The hard part is actually understanding where the clutch bite point is and really feathering that pedal into this space where you can get that proper engagement without stalling out the car. And so for them to take away the clutch pedal, it's kind of weird because this, going from 1 to 2 to 3 is the same as going from park to reverse to drive in terms of difficulty. And then it's like, okay, what's really the difference between that and a dual clutch?
Exactly. Because, I get the reason why people would want to change their gears themselves. Because automatic systems are not always the best when you consider, racing. So you want to be able to have that control. And also, just, in traffic, for fuel efficiency, there's a lot of benefits to being able to select your gear. But the thing is, the dual clutch transmissions and automatic transmissions that have gear select already do that part. So there seems like they're just going out of the way to make a more manual-like transmission when there's already good alternatives out there.
So yeah, just to kind of preface to those that don't know, dual clutch transmissions are kind of what you see in like race cars and sports cars. People like to call them like paddle shifters, basically. And a lot of paddle shifters out there aren't necessarily dual clutch, they can be automatic. But basically, the concept is the car is doing the thinking. It's using two clutches and guessing when you're going to change gears, and basically having the next gear that you're going to go to already ready, spinning, and ready to be put into gear. And so all you do on your steering wheel is hit the up or hit the down, and the car will automatically switch the gears. Mm-hmm. And so the dual clutch is really nice because you can actually get insanely fast shifts while still being in control of the gears. Unlike an automatic, which will sometimes guess their own shifts based on, your speed and how much throttle you're putting down. But this is weird because it's guessing when you want to shift based on the RPM and the throttle and stuff like that, right? And I'm sure it'll have like sport mode or whatever, which will make the shifts more aggressive. But then it's going to wait for you to actually change the gear. I wonder if you can redline this car, meaning put the RPMs all the way to max and just have it sit there and the needle just go nuts if you don't change the gear when it thinks you should be changing the gear right now.
It's really confusing, but as I said earlier, this is only from Hyundai India as of now. And if you think about the Indian group, like being from India, we understand, right? There's a lot of traffic. Like on the highway, you go a maximum of 40 miles per hour because there's a ton of traffic. And there's some hilly regions too. So with manual transmissions, it's really nice to have in traffic because the automatic transmissions just can't handle that stop and go, stop and go, stop and go.
A lot of them will like just die after a couple miles.
And the thing is, most of them are used to traditional manuals. So this is designed for them to be a little more comfortable without having to fully switch to an automatic and them having a little more control doing something that they're used to do. And, it does make sense. For starting on hills and for stop and go traffic, not having to do any clutch work is really nice because clutch work is a pain. When you're on a hill, if you don't get it right, you'll start rolling back, and stop and go traffic, you're just going to keep using your clutch so much. So it seems like a really good idea, and I think it's great for India as of now, but it's definitely not something that I hope they invest in to put in other countries.
Yeah, that makes sense. Like now that you mention it, this car, the Venue, is really like a typical commuter family car. It's compact, SUV type, so it's great in like traffic, especially in a country as populated and full of traffic as India. And so I can see how it's kind of more of a luxury feature that, okay, you can just change the gears, don't worry about the clutch, that way your left leg isn't getting such a workout and you're not as tired from just continuously switching gears. And it's just that. But then also the ability and the lack of precision that comes with a manual transmission, which is good because in traffic conditions like India where you're continuously changing gears, an automatic can really take a beating.
Yep.
And so I can see it being used in India. What I can't see is this ever coming to the States or honestly any developed country with like normal traffic because manual lovers are a niche at the end of the day.
Yep.
They're a small group of people that are typically car enthusiasts these days. The average person doesn't go out looking for a manual car. And so manuals aren't popularized like that. And for the manual lovers, they're not looking for something that takes away the fun of manual driving by taking away the clutch pedal. They want that intense connection with the vehicle, and this is losing that. And so I don't really see it coming anywhere outside of maybe staying in India, China, and some of those countries with a lot of traffic and a need for something to be more simplified.
Exactly. Our next bit of news here, the Lamborghini Sion Roadster. This car was just released a few days ago, and we had already seen the Sion before. It's Lamborghini's first attempt at making a really aggressive hybrid hypercar. I mean, it's a 6.5-liter V12, churns out around 807 horsepower, a top speed of maybe like 217 miles per hour. But I mean, Lamborghini is kind of late to the game with these hybrid supercars. The LaFerrari, McLaren P1, Porsche 918, they've been out for a while. And the Ferrari actually just released their second hybrid supercar, the SF90 Stradale, which I assume that this will go against. But the thing is, the SF90 Stradale is not extremely limited in production. This car, there's only going to be 19 of the Roadsters and 60 of the Coupes. So I honestly don't know why it's being made this late and with that much of a restricted market.
And what's the cost?
Let's just say it's over a lot of $1 million.
A lot of $1 million.
A lot of $1 million.
Right. Whereas the SF90 Stradale is like starting at 600,000.
Which is like really nice because I mean you could tell that the LaFerrari started around $3-4 million and that was their first attempt at their hybrid hypercar. And then when they launched the SF90 Stradale, everyone's like, okay, it's gonna be another super expensive, super restricted car. But surprisingly, they didn't restrict it and they cut the price down by more than half, which
which
was
is
nice. They
awesome.
made it. I mean, look, 600K is not affordable by any means to any person, but it is nice that like it's way cheaper, and maybe they'll continue making cheaper cars like
I mean,
the
they're Ferrari. Like, you're
yeah.
never gonna find a car lower than, I don't know, 250K.
But maybe their next hybrid will be around like 200K.
Right.
But either way, this seems super late, and obviously it's already sold out. Lamborghini people are crazy, and there's so many rich people in this world. But I still don't understand why Lamborghini made this car now with this kind of nature.
Yeah, I really don't understand, right? So, like, Ferrari, it makes sense. Porsche, it makes sense. And even McLaren, right? All of them have racing teams, Porsche specifically in Le Mans, and then Ferrari and McLaren heavily in Formula One. And they like to take that hybrid electric gas type of vehicle and that technology that they're putting in their race cars, basically water it down, make it more reliable than having to be rebuilt after every single race, and then sell it for millions of dollars in their hypercars, right?
Hmm.
Lamborghini doesn't really have a huge presence in the racing arena. The only like racing thing that Lamborghini has is their own like GT racing series.
Yeah.
And Ferruccio Lamborghini, the founder of the company, had actually stipulated when he founded the company, do not waste your time in racing. It is a waste of money. And he knew when he looked over at Ferrari that that's all they did. And he said, we are not here to make a race car. I don't want to get lost in that because it costs so much money. And so Lamborghini never put a big emphasis on it. They just did the GT thing, and that's with the Huracan primarily.
Yeah.
And now they have this hybrid electric car. So really, to me, I think it's because it took them time to develop a system that they were happy with, could sell for millions of dollars, was reliable, and they were like, it's been a while since we've put out a really expensive fancy car. If
Yeah.
you remember the last one being the Veneno,
Mm-hmm.
and
The Centenario. Yeah.
yeah. So then the Centenario after that. And so this is kind of their saying, okay, we're in the industry, we're in the field, we're trying to keep up with everyone. Here's our hybrid electric V12, basically LaFerrari competitor at this point.
And I mean, look, I have no issues with the car itself. I think it looks great personally. I mean, some people say it looks kind of edgy. It doesn't, but it looks like the future in my opinion. I like the blue color on this one. I like that little, like the small kind of wing it has in the back. I think I really like the looks, but it's super exclusive as a car, and I guess we can only hope that 5 years later they'll make another hybrid car and it'll be more priced like a real Lamborghini at like 300K rather than a lot of $1 million.
Right. What I'm thinking is that they can take this now that they have it in a couple of years, and we can see it in a Aventador concept, and then we can see it in a Huracan concept after the fact. Everyone's going the electric route, and hybrid is kind of every company's basically trial period of playing with electricity before they fully commit.
Uh-huh.
And so I'm hoping this is kind of like them saying, look at what we can do with hybrid electric tech. Now we're going to show it to you in kind of our quote-unquote consumer level vehicles with the Huracan and the Aventador. Personally, I don't like the look of this car. Fight me about it, but like it looks kind of awkward. Like the headlights are a little too much. So Lamborghini is known for copying a shark design. If you look at their Aventador, you look at their Huracan, it's very much inspired by especially like Mako sharks and like that kind of design with the aggressive headlights. This doesn't look like a shark very much to me at all. I actually don't like that weird carbon fiber insert that replaced the headlight. Like there's no like glass covering the headlight. So like I can imagine this is like it. I don't like it a lot. I don't know why. I don't know what it is. It just doesn't look that great to me from some angles. The back looks amazing to me.
Yeah.
The front looks kind of whack. It seems like they kind of rushed it. I don't know.
I don't know. I feel like I kind of like that headlight design a little bit because it looks like it replaces a headlight, but it's really just a ton of carbon fiber. So if you just look at it at first glance, it looks great. But even when you look more into it, I mean, I really like the LED, I don't know, like triangle logo they have at the bottom. Because inside their car lately, they've had a lot of that kind of like this kind of look here on all their stitching and stuff. So it's kind of a parallel for that. And I mean, I don't know, but I guess there's one thing I do agree with you on the headlights. I don't know how I feel about this sphere here. I feel like there should be some more of a headlight or nothing there.
It's too simple for it. Like a $10 million car.
It looks, I mean, if you think of any other Lamborghini headlight, it looks more complicated. It looks a bit simple, but I do like everything else about the car personally.
That's fair. And the thing to me that honestly disappointed me when they released the original Cyan and now like this Cyan or Cyan or whatever you want to call it. Yeah, Italian accent, insert Italian accent. Like it just looks like every other Lamborghini. Like I don't know, they released the Huracan Evo the evolution, if you will, of the
Yeah.
Huracan. It looks the same as the Huracan before it.
With just like some slight modification
Yeah,
in the
like
rear.
okay,
Yeah.
you made some lines like a little bit sharper, and the Aventador looks the same, and now the Cyan looks the same. The Centenario looks a little different on the back, but the front looks the same. It's like I don't know, but their direction is like if you look at Ferrari, right? Their biggest competitor,
Mhm.
straight out of Italy, just down the road from them. They make beautiful looking cars, but they all look independently different,
Yeah, except for the ones that are like evolutions of each other. So like the 458,
which
488
is
F8
fair,
Tributo.
right?
But like that looks completely different from like the F12 Berlinetta and the 812 Superfast, and that looks different from the Portofino and the
Exactly.
LaFerrari.
So they're different cars and their different classes all look unique. Whereas, of course, like yes, you can see an evolution within their individual models.
Yeah.
Fair. With Lamborghini, all the Aventadors look the same, all the Huracans look the same. But now the problem is we're seeing this car looking like an Aventador, looking like a Centenario, and that's the real problem.
Yeah, I guess now that I look at it more, it kind of does look like an Aventador, but I mean, yeah, it'll be an interesting choice, and we'll see how the reviews are when this car officially gets delivered to the, let's see,
$1 billion
it's-
owners.
and the 79 people lucky enough to own them. But hey, I mean, it's a personal choice, and it's not like the consumer car world has to worry about it much.
That's true.
Our next bit of news here. So Lucid, they're another electric car company. They emerged a few years ago, and they were a little bit silent until now. Their car was called the Lucid Air. It was a sedan. Their main point was like luxury. We are a luxury electric car company. Luxury, luxury, luxury. And it was supposed to be a Model S competitor. Well, they went silent around the same time Faraday Future did, because most of those startup electric car companies ended up failing because Tesla did so well and they didn't learn from any of Tesla's lessons. But now we're finally hearing about Lucid Air again. And they actually announced they're going to be opening up 20 stores in the world. And this is a sample image of those stores. And I mean, personally, yeah, it's great that they're trying to get into retail, but these stores are, well, in malls, kind of like Tesla stores, and they look kind of like Tesla stores. And just like Tesla stores, they're meant for people to just look at the car, and they have like a design gallery to design the car. And I don't know, it's not necessarily very original. And if you're trying to learn about the lessons that Tesla, like learn from the mistakes Tesla made, one of the things they're considering doing is that Tesla's considering getting rid of their stores because they're not as useful. There's an extra investment. So it's kind of dumb to see that a company like Lucid is now just going to do stores, kind of like Tesla did.
Right. It's no secret that I'm a pretty big Tesla fan.
Mm-hmm.
I love the company through and through, and sometimes that can lead me to biased opinions.
Yeah.
Right. And that's my disclaimer going into this conversation, I will
Mm-hmm.
say. But that being said, Lucid, even having this, like, basically these are like prototypes, right? No Lucid store
Yeah.
exists yet. Lucid going this route just goes to show you what an impact Tesla has had on the electric car industry. Like it
Yeah.
didn't exist, and then Tesla basically invented it,
Mhm.
right? People like Chevy were making cute little dinky electric cars until then.
Yeah.
But making an electric car cool, making it luxurious, and putting it like this in like a boutique kind of store was huge when Tesla first started.
Yeah.
Now it makes sense that Tesla's doing away with their stores because now they're trying to go for that mass consumer buy our Model 3, buy our Model Y type of design. And for those people, they don't care, they can't cater to this unique boutique experience of
Exactly.
one-on-one conversations, feel this material, pick that color, and check out this texture, and then let's put it all together. You know what I mean? They have people coming in, and their stores are packed because
Yeah.
everyone wants a Model 3 or a Model Y. A couple people still want the Model S's and the Model X's, and they try to cater to them more because, it's a luxury car and it's more expensive or whatever. But that's why Tesla wants to do away with their stores, because they're like, well, the value of interacting with the customer one-on-one is being diluted in our store interface, where now we have so much infrastructure online and these wonderful service centers where you can kind of still have that experience
Exactly,
without
yeah.
paying that huge monthly retail cost to be in a mall. You know what I mean?
Because the service center is useful in itself to service the cars you've already made. And on that note of comparing the Lucid Air store to the Tesla stores, well, this is a Tesla store here, and yeah, I mean, it's obviously very reminiscent. The lettering, the colors, the overall layout, how things are designed. It's pretty obvious they're kind of like just going for that kind of vibe. One interesting thing that I like is that I don't know if you can see in the background, but there's a chair and a steering wheel, and then there's some screens over there. And apparently those are designed, well, because it's an electric car, it's kind of easy to replicate a simulation for.
Yeah.
So those are designed to be their test drives or simulators for customers to try out to see what driving the car feels like, which I wish Tesla did that in the past, and I'm actually kind of happy about that. It's a new thing that most car companies can't do, so I'm glad they're using that advantage.
See, that's really exciting because I really hope that it does work out because one of the cool benefits of doing that is without having test cars that you need to, basically run and devalue, the company can focus on saving those costs firsthand by having these simulators. One thing though that is my concern is I'm sure a lot of people before, putting down whatever 100K or plus
Yeah.
it costs for this Lucid car, they're not going to be happy with that little plastic simulator.
No,
They're going to want to test drive
they'll
the
need
car.
to do more, but I mean, there's a lot of people that come into like Tesla stores just to test drive the car and not really have any care of purchasing it. They just go,
Right.
they look at it, they're like, okay, just want to drive in a Tesla today, and Tesla's okay with it, but they do lose money. But this allows someone to do something like that without necessarily having to have like serious intent of buying the car because it's a cheap thing to have in there. And also now they can control, be like, okay, if you're just a recreational person and you want to test drive the car, fine, you can use the simulator, and they can reserve those test drives for serious clientele only.
Yeah, I'm interested to see where the company ends up. They've had their ups and downs, like a lot of baby automakers, and the auto industry is very difficult to establish yourself in. And with Tesla having already such a huge lead, it'll be interesting to see how this works out. But you can bet that if they open a store near us, I'm definitely going to go check it out.
Oh yeah, for sure. Now let's move into cutting the apex. So F1 has finally started. I've been looking forward to this for so long. We already had 2 races, and they've been back to back in terms of their weeks. And now we're gonna have a third race coming up in Hungary. And these first 2 races has been everything an F1 fan looks forward to. There's been last second drama. There's been like protests against each other in the terms of the teams. There's been unexpected victories, unexpected failures. It's honestly like an amazing story so far.
I completely agree. I'm really happy that they've started the season off with a bang because every time that F1 can do that, they're getting more F1 fans, more people interested in it, which honestly is a win for everyone.
Exactly. And so a lot of surprises. So, I mean, first of all, the biggest not surprise, I guess, Mercedes is amazing. They won the last 2 races and they're number 1 in the Constructors' Championship as usual. Nothing surprising there. They've been leading for the last 6-7 years, so we're not surprised. But what is surprising that their other 2 top teams, Red Bull and Ferrari, have not been doing as well at all. Well, Red Bull, although doing not terrible, are not doing as good as they wanted. Their main position last year was that we are going to be the team that really challenges Mercedes next year. And they had some signs of that. But this year, they're not challenging Mercedes as much. Their car gets beaten up by Mercedes every single race.
Yeah.
And it's just disappointing.
That's the thing. It's really interesting. So like the last 2 races that we just had were in Austria, right, at the Red Bull Ring. So for those of you that don't know, it's at very high altitude in the Alps, and with a car like an F1 car, they're literally children. They're very sensitive machines, right? They need just these optimal, wonderful conditions to run at their best. And one of the best things that Mercedes engineers have always been able to do, along with bringing crazy innovations to the world of F1, is they can set up their car really well to be that number 1 car at every single track. Right? Lewis Hamilton, their number 1 driver, 6-time world champion with Mercedes, has won at every single track, which is huge, right? Because while driver skill is important, the car has to be very, very good for you to be able to do that. Whereas Red Bull has always had its ups and downs, right? There are some tracks like Monaco where the Red Bull always outshines its competitors. It's incredible on that track. But then you would think, okay, it's called the Red Bull Ring, and these are Red Bull cars, that they would be doing pretty well.
And also in the last 2 years, Red Bull's won back-to-back. So they have a precedent for being amazing at this track.
Exactly. But then they come back this year. Honda actually gives them an upgraded power unit, or an upgraded engine, basically.
Yeah.
And they still have a power deficit to Mercedes.
Exactly. I mean, the first race they had, both cars had engine issues and they did not finish the race, unfortunately. But in the second race, both drivers were completely fine. But when Valtteri Bottas, a Mercedes driver, went to pass Max Verstappen, the leading driver for Red Bull, it just looked so easy. Verstappen didn't have he tried to defend once and it worked because he's a good driver at the end of the day, but when the car doesn't have enough power, it doesn't have enough power, so the Mercedes just easily overtook it. And then Ferrari, the other team that was supposed to be the Mercedes challenger, they've been kind of going down for the last few years. In 2018, their lead driver Vettel at the time was close to winning the world championship. But in 2019, they weren't doing as well. Charles Leclerc, their new rookie driver, was doing pretty well. But this year, they were like, okay, we're going to be great. But during testing, people already saw the car was kind of slow. And these races just confirmed that. In both races, only one of the cars made it to the final level of qualifying, which was really disappointing. They're usually always a guaranteed spot for that final level of qualifying. And in both races, they had at least one DNF. Like, it really was not great at all. This race, both in the last race that just happened, both the drivers crashed each other out essentially, and it's so disappointing to see that happen. It's just like a team that has all this history is just absolutely garbage now. They've gone from one of the top 3 teams that like everyone has to compete with to just another midfield team.
Right. Ferrari's always been an interesting competitor because in terms of Formula One history, they are one of the top 2 teams, I would say, in F1, alongside Williams, who has kind of been downhill, I guess, for the later part of this whole decade, really. Ferrari has always been all about Formula One. They have a ton of wins. They're actually so important in F1 that the Formula One organization gives them a chunk of money every year just for being part of the sport.
For being like a legacy team. Yeah.
Exactly. And so you would expect them to always be at least somewhere in the front of the pack. They may not be always winning every single race. Like we said, Mercedes has won the constructors or the car developers championship for the last 7 years. And Ferrari hasn't been able to beat them, but they've come really close a couple times. In the last 3 years, they've actually gone downhill. And it's gotten to the point where, yeah, like you said, when the 2 drivers crashed into each other, Sebastian Vettel and Charles Leclerc, going into like turn 1 on lap 1, basically, or turn 2 on lap 1, they actually went, and the director of the team for Ferrari said, yeah, there's no point blaming the drivers. They made mistakes. Okay, fine. He said, the real problem is that we shouldn't have been in the middle of the pack to begin with.
Exactly.
Right? They started the race in 10th and 11th.
Which is not great. They set pole laps. They always get first usually, and they're really good. But yeah, this year they've been so terrible in terms of speed. And some people say that may be attributed because last year there was kind of a cheating allegation. Their engine was too powerful, and somehow they got away with it. And this year there were some regulations placed on that. So maybe it's because they can't cheat anymore, but it is somewhat disappointing to see that happen to them. But what I'm most excited about is McLaren. They're a team that's been doing not so great for the last couple of years in F1, but this year and last year they showed quite some promise, and now they're number 2 in the Constructors' Championship, beating Red Bull, Ferrari, and a ton of other teams. And their 2 drivers who signed that t-shirt right there, Carlos Sainz and Lando Norris, are actually performing amazingly. Lando got his first pole on the first opening race of the year, and Carlos got 5th or 6th that race, which is amazing. And even last race, Lando got 5th, and he currently holds 3rd in the Drivers' Championship among the likes of Sebastian Vettel and Lewis Hamilton, 4-time and 6-time world championships, respectively.
Right, and considering that Lando Norris, this is his 2nd season. Last year he was a rookie. He came from F2, and now he's in Formula One. This is really his first genuine season with the team as an established driver. It's really exciting to kind of see the skill that he's been able to pull from the vehicle, but it's even more exciting to see that the car has actually done so well. What I'm really looking forward to is hopefully they can kind of hold that lead as we go into the next set of races, and it's not just track-specific advantages, but even more so when they changed their engine supplier from Renault, who they currently have, over to a Mercedes power unit next year. It could be very exciting to see McLaren back on the top as they used to be decades ago as title contenders.
Because clearly they've honed in on their aero development. Their chassis is really good right now because it's performing amazingly. But you can see on the track that sometimes they have a power deficit. Likes of Red Bull and Mercedes can pass them pretty easily. And maybe that's just attributed to the Renault engine, which isn't amazing. But when they switch to Mercedes, with a combination of that engine and their amazing chassis, next year they could honestly just be title contenders. But I do really feel bad for Carlos Sainz. This is his last year on the team, and the car is better than ever, and they have the best like promise of like doing extremely well. But Carlos Sainz, if you saw our episode from a few weeks ago, is switching to Ferrari, who's having one of the worst seasons of all time. It's kind of ironic, wouldn't you say?
It's kind of a train wreck, I guess, because I'm really excited to see Carlos, who's still their most experienced driver. He's raced with Red Bull, he's raced with Renault in the past. He's a really good driver, and now he finally has a car that he can kind of flex his skills. He's had a couple difficult races the past two races, but he's done decently well, and I can expect him to do really well the rest of the season. Now he's going to switch over to basically Ferrari, who are like the Patriots of Formula
Yeah.
1 when it comes to, shady deals in the background and always doing really well. But and it's every driver's dream to race for a team like Ferrari. But now they're not looking so great. I wonder if he can kind of Control Z undo that contract.
Yeah, I mean, some people are telling him to Carlos unsigns, which is, I mean, it's quite pretty funny. But yeah, he's in a tricky situation. But speaking of the driver market, so a few weeks ago we talked about Sainz going to Ferrari, Ricciardo going to McLaren, but like now we found out that Fernando Alonso, a racing legend, two-time world championship, is going back to Renault, the team that he actually has his two world titles with. So that was quite a long time ago. I mean, early 2000s when he had those world championships. And since then, he raced for McLaren. He went back to Renault for a little bit, but that didn't go well. Then he went to Ferrari, and he didn't do as well there, but he had a successful season, I guess. And then back to McLaren, where it was a train wreck until his last season, and then he left. So, really interesting career. Been a long time since he's been a world champion, but he's going back to Renault, and that's kind of interesting because it puts Sebastian Vettel, who's got kicked out of Ferrari. So we actually found out that it was not his choice to leave the team. Earlier reports said that it was a mutual disagreement between him and the team, and they both decided to leave. Well, turns out Ferrari just kicked him out and had him stay quiet until the first race. But yeah, it's been really interesting, and honestly, people think he's going to retire now, but there are a ton of seats still open.
Right. While a ton of these seats still look like they're open, I'll be honest, I don't think they really are. Right? Like, first of all, Sebastian Vettel has limited spots he can go to.
Exactly.
He's not going to go to a competing team, right? So he's not going to go to, like, Williams, who is just a garbage, and they use a Mercedes engine.
And they want, like, they have their own drivers. They use a lot of, like, rookie drivers.
Right. He's not going to go to Toro. He might go to Toro Rosso, actually.
But here's the thing so people are saying that he's had talks with Helmut Marko, the head of Red Bull, both the Red Bull teams. And, well, Sebastian Vettel won his 4 world championships with Red Bull. He was their first big driver. But the thing is, Red Bull, at least their team principal, Christian Horner, has made it very, very clear that they will not be having Vettel on their team and that they'd much rather have Alex Albon on their team, who currently races for them. And same with Mercedes. Toto Wolff is mostly clear at this point that they want Valtteri Bottas and Lewis Hamilton, their current drivers, to both stay. So I really don't think there's a spot for him there.
Sounds like Sebastian Vettel's going to be homeless.
Yeah, honestly, at this point. Because, I mean, look, if you think about his other options, there's Alfa Romeo, Haas, and Racing Point. Racing Point isn't going to work out. Lance Stroll has the seat currently, and his father owns most of the team. Daddy Stroll owns most of the team, and so he's most likely going to stay there. Williams, as you mentioned, is not a great team right now, and they're not likely to get... They're absolutely garbage. Haas is about to leave the sport, honestly. Gene Haas is, like, not sure how committed he is to the sport anymore, and they've been having absolute garbage seasons.
Another garbage
back-to-back.
team. Yeah, the last 2 races they finished. They didn't even finish the first race. In the second race, they were in, like, near the back of the pack.
It's been terrible. And then Alfa Romeo is Ferrari's, like, baby team. And I doubt that he's going to go back to Ferrari. Like, there's no chance. So I think we've seen our last of Sebastian. Well, I don't think we've seen our last of him. I think he's not going to race in 2021, but maybe he'll come back in 2022 with the brand new cars. But yeah, I think we're going to have to say goodbye to our 4-time world championship for a season.
Which is fine. Maybe what he really needs from F1 is a break, because I think his time at Ferrari was a train wreck. He thought he would go there and it would be amazing. And, while he is still an incredible driver, the car just hasn't been there.
Yeah, So people have been bringing this up quite a bit about Ferrari, because Fernando Alonso, when he raced for Ferrari, he was like, okay, I'm going to be the driver that gets the world championship with Ferrari. And then Fernando Alonso leave, Vettel comes along, and then Vettel's like, oh, I'm going to be the driver to get a world championship for Ferrari. And then Kimi Räikkönen was in there too. It's like, I'm also going to get a world championship with Ferrari. And you have to think, when three of the best drivers of all time, who all have previous world championships, come race for your team, I don't think it's their fault. I think it's the team's fault and the car's fault. You really cannot blame the drivers at this point.
Right, and I know the Ferrari fans out there are going nuts hearing this right now because, Ferrari fans are the kind of fans that are diehard for the team and don't typically care that much about the driver, to be honest with you.
No, not at all.
They're like, he's fast, he's good, put him in a Ferrari, he's going to win. Mm-hmm. And Ferrari has been really hurting with that. You can look at any other team with drivers that are not as good doing very well comparatively.
Take, for example, Sergio Perez and Lance Stroll. Both drivers aren't great, but their car's really good, and now they're competing for top places.
Right. Lance Stroll bought his way into F1.
Yeah, has absolutely no skill.
Right.
Really.
I don't like him as a driver.
No.
I don't think he, besides the racing lessons that his billionaire dad paid for, I don't really see him as a good driver, but he's still doing well, especially this season, because they copy-pasted the Mercedes Formula 1 car design from last year.
Which is very disappointing to hear. But, I mean, hey, I hate that they're doing well with it, but if they get away with it, it might be one of the smartest things any F1 team has done.
Right, and so, this is why I like talking about F1, right? Because unlike a lot of other racing, NASCAR, there's a lot of interesting drama that goes in behind the scenes, and it makes the sport a lot more entertaining. They take left and right turns. There's a lot of interesting innovation, and so that's why I like to keep up with it. That's why I like to follow it. That's why I encourage people out there to get into F1 if you haven't. If you're interested in any kind of car racing, look into F1. There's a reason it's world famous. There's a reason why everyone starts with F1 is because it's the easiest to get into. It's the most exciting, even though people have been complaining that it's not as much right now. It still is more than any other racing sport out there, and it's worth checking out.
For sure. Well, guys, that's all we have for today's video. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and watch our previous videos for more car culture. Also, you can catch the audio version of our podcast on Spotify and Anchor.fm, and make sure to follow our Instagram at carculture_TV, and stay tuned for next week's video. Bye.
Thank you.